Ambassador Vektar's mandibles clicked in amusement as he reviewed the human proposal on his datapad. Around the circular council chamber of the Galactic Trade Consortium, representatives from a dozen species shared his sentiment. The Zephyrian. Delegates' crystalline body chimed with laughter, while the massive Gorlan ambassador's trunk-like appendages swayed in what passed for mirth among his kind. "Let me understand this correctly," Vektar said, his four eyes focusing on the human representative. "Your species wishes to establish a mining operation on asteroid K7742, one of the most worthless rocks in the Kepler belt." Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief mining engineer, stood calmly before the assembly. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her coveralls bore the insignia of the Terran Mining Consortium. "That's correct, Ambassador. We're requesting a 50-year lease on the asteroid for mineral extraction purposes." The Vorthon Trade Minister, a being whose gas-filled suit allowed him to participate in solid matter environments, released what sounded like a wheeze. "Humans, your persistence is quaint. That asteroid contains nothing but iron, nickel, and trace amounts of platinum. The extraction costs would exceed any possible profit by a factor of 10. The hegemony conducted a thorough survey 3 cycles ago," added the Zephyrian. "We found it economically unviable even with our advanced extraction techniques. What could you primitive newcomers possibly accomplish that we could not?" Dr. Chen's expression remained neutral. "We have our methods. The lease terms are quite reasonable. Virtually nothing, given the asteroid's perceived value. We're simply asking for permission to try." More laughter echoed through the chamber. The Gorlan ambassador's massive frame shook with amusement. "Very well, human. If you wish to waste your resources on that floating debris, the consortium sees no reason to object. Perhaps it will teach your species a valuable lesson about galactic economics." The vote was unanimous. Within 3 standard months, humanity had been granted exclusive rights to asteroid K7742. 2 years later, Captain Zethrix of the hegemony patrol ship Domination's Edge was conducting routine surveillance of human activities when his sensors detected something unusual. The asteroid that had once been a tumbling piece of space rock now appeared to have structures attached to it. "Sensor officer, magnify the human mining colony," Zethrix ordered, his scaled hands gripping the command chair. The main screen shimmered, revealing an image that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. The asteroid had been transformed into something unrecognizable. Massive metal frameworks extended from its surface like mechanical roots, while cylindrical structures rotated slowly around its core. Most disturbing of all were the obvious weapon emplacements: railguns, missile, pods, and energy projectors that wouldn't have looked out of place on a hegemony battle station. "Sir," the sensor officer stammered, "I'm reading approximately 3,000 human life signs aboard that installation, and the energy signatures suggest they're operating some kind of industrial complex that's far beyond anything we've seen from their homeworld." Zethrix's blood ran cold. "Get me a direct channel to Hegemony Command, immediately." Dr. Chen stood in the observation deck of what the humans had code-named Ironhold Station, watching as another massive freight hauler docked with their primary loading bay. The transformation of K7742 had exceeded even her own optimistic projections. The asteroid's hollow interior now housed one of the most sophisticated manufacturing facilities in the galaxy. Using techniques pioneered in Earth's asteroid belt, human engineers had turned the floating rock into a self-sustaining industrial complex. The worthless iron and nickel that other species had dismissed were being converted into hull plating, structural supports, and defensive systems at an unprecedented rate. Dr. Chen called her assistant Marcus Webb from the communications station. "We're receiving another diplomatic inquiry from the consortium. That's the 5th one this week." Chen smiled grimly. "Let me guess. They want to renegotiate our lease terms?" "Actually, this one's different. It's from the Hegemony Military Command. They're requesting permission to conduct an inspection of our facility." Through the observation port, Chen could see the latest addition to their defenses, a ring of automated defense platforms that had been constructed entirely from local materials. Each platform was armed with kinetic impactors that could punch through any known shield technology, powered by fusion reactors built from the asteroid's abundant, heavy elements. "Tell the Hegemony that we're operating within the terms of our legally binding agreement with the consortium," Chen replied. "Any inspection would need to be authorized by our leaseholders." She didn't mention that those defensive platforms were merely the visible portion of their capabilities. Hidden throughout the asteroid's interior were manufacturing bays producing everything from advanced fighters to long-range missiles. The mining colony had become the forward base for humanity's expansion into the outer systems. 6 months later, when the Hegemony's first fleet arrived to demand humanity's withdrawal from their space, they found themselves facing not a helpless mining outpost, but a fortress that bristled with weapons and defenses. The asteroid that they had once dismissed as worthless had become the anchor point for a defensive network that stretched across half the system. Admiral Thorek commanding. The Hegemony fleet from his flagship stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans hadn't just fortified their asteroid, they had turned it into the hub of a vast military-industrial complex. Smaller installations dotted nearby asteroids, all connected by a web of patrol ships and defensive platforms. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I'm reading weapon signatures that match or exceed our own battleship armaments, and there are at least 50 smaller vessels moving to intercept positions." On the main screen, Dr. Chen's image appeared, though she now wore the uniform of the Terran Defense Force rather than mining coveralls. Behind her, the bustling activity of a military command center was clearly visible. "Admiral Thorek," she said cordially, "welcome to Ironhold Station. I trust you're here for the scheduled inspection we discussed. Our lease agreement with the Galactic Trade Consortium grants us full sovereignty over this facility and its defensive perimeter." The Admiral's expression darkened. "You deceived the consortium. This is no mining operation." "On the contrary," Chen replied, her tone remaining pleasant. "We've extracted over 10 million tons of refined materials from this asteroid. The fact that we've chosen to use those materials to construct defensive installations is well within our rights as lease holders. Unless, of course, the Hegemony wishes to challenge a legally binding consortium agreement." Around the chamber, Thorek's officers exchanged nervous glances. Challenging a consortium trade agreement would mean economic warfare with every member species. "I trust your fleet will maintain a respectful distance from our installation," Chen continued. "Our defensive systems are quite sensitive to unauthorized approaches." As if to emphasize her point, the tactical display showed energy signatures, spiking across the human defensive network. The message was clear: approach at your own risk. Admiral Thorek found himself in the unprecedented position of retreating from a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel a century ago. As his fleet withdrew, he couldn't help but wonder what other mining operations humanity might be planning throughout the galaxy. Behind them, Ironhold Station continued its work, converting worthless space rock into the foundation of humanity's growing presence among the stars. The aliens had laughed at humanity's ambition, but they weren't laughing anymore.